Welcome back, viewers. We're still talking about the transition of power in Ghana after the passing of former President John Atta Mills, who died last week in Ghana. And we have on the phone today Nii Akuetteh, who is a specialist on African affairs based in Washington, D.C. Hello, Nii. Welcome to Sahara TV.
Hello.
Yes. Let's just go straight to the point. Why did Ghana have such a seamless, peaceful transition, in your view, after the death of John Atta Mills?
Well, I think there has to be several reasons, but the one that I would argue should be focused on is the fact that since independence, Ghana has actually had a turbulent political history. With many coups, and I think that Ghanaians learned a lesson. I am extremely sure that Ghanaians came to the conclusion that political instability, especially of the military coup kind, so to speak, fool's gold. They look good, but they never solve anything. And so the country sort of came to the decision that democratic political change, while it may not be perfect, is the one that helps everyone individually as well as the country collectively. So I would say it comes from lessons, hard-learned lessons in the 50-some years since independence.
Wow. And, you know, John Dramani Mahama took over. What do you think about him? Because we spoke briefly to Professor George Ayite, who felt that, you know, Dramani is a very good person. He has integrity, but he doubts very seriously if their party will make any impact in the December elections.
Well, you know, I've known Professor Ayite for a long time, and I don't give credence to much of his. I think his analyses are not that great. I would love to debate specific issues with him. But on one thing, I do agree with him that President Mahama comes to the presidency with a very good image. Now, President Mahama has held a number of jobs, you know, in the political arena, from a parliamentarian to a minister under Jerry Rawlings, and then to President Mills, vice president. So he's not new to politics. On the other hand, nothing really prepares you for the presidency, especially when, you know, I'm sure Tuesday morning, President Mahama, you know, was thinking of himself as vice president. Then by Tuesday evening, he's the president. And there is an election in 5 months. He has not selected his vice president and running mate. So all this is coming new to you. So I agree a little bit with Professor Ayite that Mr. Mahama so far has a lot of integrity. He is well regarded, he has good intellect, he's a good writer, but the presidency tests everyone, so he will be tested. And in his case, he came very suddenly, and so he has to put together his own team, including who his vice president will be. He has to run the country with a lot of pressure. International observers, especially the business types and the banking types, are putting pressure on him to slow down inflation, whereas on the other hand, there's pressure from Ghanaians to make sure that the cost of living doesn't go up. So that's his second test, apart from putting together a team, managing the country and resisting certain pressures. But I think his greatest test is going to be fighting the election. It's going to be a very close election. Even President Mills, the late president, analysts were predicting that he might lose because the opposition party has been mounting a very strong campaign, and there's been a few corruption scandals. Now, the question is, will President Mahama do better than President Mills would have done? Part of it, would it be that he will get some, what you call it, sympathy because of the death of the president.
Let me ask you quickly. Let me ask you quickly, because when we spoke to Mr. Yitte earlier, Professor Yitte earlier, he said it is difficult to judge the legacy of Mr. Mills, late President Mills, because he was sick, for almost the entire period of his leadership in the country, and that enabled a lot of characters, he claimed, to take over government and do what they wanted with it, including getting involved in corruption. And he said, this guy was never in control. Do you agree with him?
I don't agree with him. As I was saying, I've known Professor Yitte for almost 30 years. I think that he tends to make unsupported claims. You know, Professor Mills, he was a law professor for a long time, so many people refer to him as Professor Mills. President Mills had a very quiet, soft-spoken demeanor, the opposite of President Rawlings. In terms of personality and how they carry themselves. So it is easy to think that President Mills, it's easy in my view to make the mistake and think that President Mills was not in charge. He was definitely in charge. He resisted a lot of pressure. People should not forget that he managed. It wasn't easy being vice president to President Rawlings. President Rawlings got rid of one vice president, Aka, who died. And then President Mr. Mills became the vice president. I think he was deceptively strong and calm, so it is easy to misread him. Now, as I said, yes, there were issues of corruption, but you have to remember that even there is bad blood, even as we speak. There is bad blood between former President Rawlings and the late President Mills. And President Mills' family just came out to push back against Jerry Rawlings. Part of the reason is that President Mills was strong enough to resist pressure that Mr. Rawlings was putting on him. So I am saying, no, I don't agree with Professor Yitte that Mr. Mills was not in charge. He was in charge. It is easy to make that mistake because he was not bombastic. Now, of course, he had serious health problems, but he was a 68-year-old man who had cancer. So, you know, we are told that on Monday evening, he felt bad, and by Tuesday he was dead. Now, he had gone to the U.S. for treatment. I hear he had gone to other countries too. So, obviously, the illness got worse at some point, which is why he died. And so at what point would he have been too sick to run the country? But I'm saying again, I disagree with Professor Yitte that Mr. Mills was never in charge. I think that's an easy, unthoughtful conclusion to read. It is too easy to say that.
Well, Africa has had a history of leaders like that just rule by proxy. You know, I mean, before the Egyptian revolution, the former Egyptian president Hosni Mubarak was known to be incapable of running the country for a long time. He's been sick, going back and forth. The Zimbabwean president is known to be sick. Now we're hearing about Ethiopia. Nigeria had its own problem with Yar'Adua. And even the president of Senegal was not known to be physically incapacitated, but at the age of 84, before he was kicked out of power, he was known not to be no longer in charge. So don't you see that there's some point in all of that?
Well, look, I agree with some things. All the examples you cited, from Senegal to Egypt to other places, I can even give you an example from the United States. When President Roosevelt died in 1945, it was clear that people around him and his wife, when he was sick, had been running the country for a while because they had power. So I accept the phenomenon that happens a lot. But the fact that it happens a lot is no proof that it happened in President Mills' case. Okay? And especially if we are going by what you are telling me, Professor Yitte said and implied, that for all the 3.5 years, almost 4 years that Mr. Mills was president, that he was never in charge, I would say that's complete bunk. And I'm willing to debate Professor Akuetteh about that, because it is an incendiary charge to make without proof. Yes, it happened. Okay, it happened in Egypt. It may have happened in Senegal. It definitely happened with Mr. Yaradua, because I followed that closely and I was commenting on it as it was happening. I'm not denying it doesn't happen. It happens in a lot of places. But did it happen in Ghana for almost 4 years where Mr. Mills was not in charge? I'm saying that is a charge that glib pundits make. It is not a thoughtful, fact-based, evidence-based analysis that Mr. Mills was not in charge. In fact, he was quiet, but as I said, he strongly resisted pressure from President Rawlings. And President Rawlings was not easily resisted by anybody. But Mr. Mills resisted his pressure that he should go after former President Kufuor, he should go after the NPP. So I think my view of President Mills was that while he was quiet and soft-spoken, he was that actually comes from a very strong constitution and feeling. So he knew what he thought. He went about things calmly. And yes, of course, there were some allegations of corruption. But I can tell you that when the NPP was in power, there were allegations of corruption. In this country, there are allegations of corruption.
Yes, Nii, we will be happy to bring you and Professor George Akuetteh together on our show one of these days to have a very robust debate about Ghana. It's going to happen, and we'll make it happen. Thank you so much for coming on our show.
Yeah, I hope you do. I've been trying to debate Professor Akuetteh for a long time. The last time I did was in my class at Georgetown, and I asked him to invite me to his class at America, and he never did. So good luck to you if you can have that debate.
Well, that's the name of Nigeria's president, so we have plenty of it.
Sure, I would love to have it. I'm just letting you know that you shouldn't be surprised if he doesn't want to do it.
Well, we'll try. Thank you so much, and we'll be back as things develop in Ghana, especially towards December elections. Thank you. So, viewers, it's SaharaTV once again. I will be talking to Nii Akuetteh from Washington, D.C., following what Professor George Akuetteh said about Ghana. And we will be continuing our show today with the roundtable, where we'll talk to people on the ground in Ghana. We're talking to Ama Mensah, Samuel Obor, and Dele Momodu actually lives in Ghana. So we're going to talk to him to talk about what has been happening in Ghana and what they see is going to happen, and as Ghana moves to elections in December 2012.